Excellent. Well, hi and welcome everyone. This is our fourth of this season ref development session for 23-24. Tonight will be a little bit different, less thematic, less specific, but more based on feedback that's come across from Coach Logic, feedback that's come across from our CMO group, as well as team coaches and anecdotal conversations had around the grounds. But effectively, everything is going to be based off of our key focus areas. So if you don't have access to those, for reference, I'll pop it into the chat right now, so you can download and view at your own leisure. If you give me a moment, I'll have those ready for you. All right. So if you just testing that link right now. So yeah, those are our key focus areas updated for 23-24. That first page is obviously interactive. You can tap on, tackler, jackler, for example, and it will take you to that, 2 to 3 minute video guide. And if you scroll through the document, there's the alignment page for players and coaches, as well as our core officiating skills, namely observe, decide, manage, and then lead, as we added this year. So now that those are in your back pocket for reference, we'll kick off. So effectively, we're going to try and explore from a broad view everything that was relevant, at least for those who fed back into the Coach Logic feed, and for those who were active in in less formal discussions across the grounds. Overarching our big areas: breakdown, space, set piece, and management. And again, some of the focus tonight will be at times a bit space focus, at times a bit management focus. But again, if there's anything that is not covered, then you're like, oh, this is a burning question or a burning issue that you've noticed through the first half of the age grade and senior season, we'll have time at the end to go through that. But without further ado, let's kick off. So as I said to you before, the alignment pieces for match officials as well as players and coaches in that document are also available from a major KFA perspective. So breakdown, we see how those pieces align, space, set piece, and management. And again, the goal is to try and steer our conversation to at least make our language as standard as we can get it, so that we can at least be talking about the same situations, even when we don't have access to video. So that's pretty important when we're speaking with members of the community, as well as fellow match officials, coaches and match officials, etc. So just as a bit of a model, so I'm going to be sending in the group chat, or sorry, in the chat in just a moment, our discussion clips for this evening. So all of them are going to be on, as we usually do, on a closed YouTube link, so that you can navigate back and forth between the clips yourself and not rely on the, at times, jumpy Zoom feed on my screen. But effectively, what we're going to do is go through 3 series of clips. The first being general. So we're going to focus on 3 questions. Which key focus areas require refereeing? So are we needing to referee the tackler? Are we needing to referee head contact process, as an example? The second key question that we'll focus on is, what or who are you identifying as the difference maker? So that could be the tackler lying in their way, or that could be where you are on the field. That's what we mean by what or who. And then finally, hopefully where we want to get to is, what do you need to see? So as soon as you've identified what in particular your decision is based on, what do you need to see that would obviously determine whether that decision is play on, penalty kick, yellow card, red card, or a decision to manage, etc. So just before I send you those clips as an example, I'll pop it up on my screen just to model that process. So the first question you're going to be asked, and it will be on a little Mentimeter that I'll share as well in just a moment, is which key focus area requires the most refereeing in this scenario. So here we have obviously the goal lines there. We can talk about pillars being on or offside. We can talk with dominant tackle there. We can talk about tackler. But obviously where we want to get to as a group is in a clip like this one, especially with a big shot coming in, and tackler not being an issue, is we're looking at that jackler, despite being close to the line. And whether or not we agree, and again, the focus is not on the individual referee decisions, the focus would be on what do you need to see. So if you decided that the jackler was the thing you were most interested in, are you clear in your own mind on that definition? And that's why I put it in the chat, are key focus areas, that you can go back and look at it if your definition in your brain isn't quite as clear as you want it to be. So yeah, we want to be able to articulate what that looks like. So what do you need to see from a jackler? In this example, ability to lift the ball, etc. And we'll go from there. So I will pop up onto the chat right now our clips for this evening. Give me one moment. All right, so in the chat, and you can find that either on the top or the bottom of your screen. It's that little cartoon dialog box, and you tap on chat, and you should see, if you haven't already seen the link to our key focus areas PDF, you'll see that YouTube link. So if you open that up in a different tab, you'll be able to navigate through that video. I will share it on my screen as well, just in case you don't have access to that. Or have the ability to navigate through multiple screens, but it is there for you. So we will look at the first clip, and I will queue up that in just one moment's time. Okay. So we will, instead of getting into a discussion straight away, the first three clips, I'll pop up a little opportunity for you to just enter your answer in different formats into the Mentimeter, which I'll share in a moment. And then that way everyone gets a chance to independently chuck in their input, and then we'll be able to unpack that after this first series of three clips. So I will start it on my screen. We'll run through clip number 1 and we'll stop it. If you have it on your own screen, no problems at all. Just one late joiner, there are the session clips. So we'll just look at clip number 1. I will pop the question into the chat in just a moment. All right, we'll stop it there. So bear with me 1 second and I will pop over to a different screen. Okay, so I'm going to put in the chat right now our link to join the Mentimeter. And if you do not see it on your screen, the code is 84396532. So it should automatically, in most browsers, enter the code for you. But if you open that screen and you don't have the code, you can pop it in. It's in the meeting chat. So effectively, and I will up just because I saw one person just joined us. So there are the session clips. We're looking at session clip number 1. So the question is, which key focus area requires refereeing? And the cool thing is you can slide these across left or right, depending on what you think is the most relevant and what you think is the least relevant. Sweet. So the cool thing is there's not one answer. And again, this activity is designed just to get us thinking about the fact that the game is dynamic, and we do have to consider multiple things, but usually one, maybe two things should jump out into the foreground. So we'll give it another 30 seconds, and then I will take a screenshot of this information just for future reference. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So the next question we'll ask you is, who or what is the difference maker? So, and again, you can slide that scale across from most relevant to least relevant. Just for everyone's benefit, I'll pop up the clip one more time on my screen. Sweet. Awesome. So the majority of people identified that the jackler and the cleaners are the most relevant piece, which is awesome. Obviously, the speed of ball is important if the attack did enough to hang on. And again, secondarily, where the pillar is onside to begin with, that's always something that we need to consider, especially in certain areas of the field that are more congested. So I'll throw it open to the group. Our third question, which we'll do in a slightly different format. What do you need to see? So if we've identified that the jackler is that key area that we want to identify, or we think is the most relevant, and we feel that the actor, obviously the person themselves is where we're looking. What do we need to see from them? What's a snappy definition we can tell ourselves? Feel free to unmute yourself and fire it in the chat. Sweet. Awesome. So Sam, I love that. Like you're basically describing what you want to see. But again, if we go, and Raj, same thing, you say on feet. But if we go back to our key focus areas for a moment here, apologies, I'll just go here and there. So we go back to breakdown. So we've identified that the jackler is there. What we want to tell players and coaches in our conversations is, they say, oh, how can I get the reward, or how can I avoid getting penalized? We try to use that language, lifting the ball. Obviously arriving square to the goal line is important in that gate. But the key is lifting the ball. So just like BK says, correct arrival on feet, hands on the ball. If we can assume that they're facing the right way. They've squared up as World Rugby's introduced as language for entry. If someone can lift the ball effectively, what we're saying is they have to be on their feet. It's nearly impossible to be able to lift the ball while being not supporting your weight, or a lot of these terms that get thrown around. So we try to use terms that can be used under pressure and in a variety of scenarios. So whether you are making a decision that's clear and obvious, like this one, and again, it's no coincidence that we start with something that's a little bit more clear cut. We need to be able to practice those definitions while we're watching the game, and whether or not we're refereeing a game in training, or in a common competitive format. We have to be able to be comfortable with those definitions in those controlled settings, so that when the going gets tough, we can make the decision that's the easiest to follow. Sweet. So moving on to clip number 2. I'll pop it up on my screen, but again, you will have that link to the clips in your chat feed. All right. So before you take a stab at this one, if you have a chance to go back and glance at the key focus areas, before you commit, just look at the whole big picture grid here, because there's a lot going on, but there's one particular element that may jump out to you if you had a chance to look at the thing holistically. Okay, so in a slightly different format, but same question, which key focus area in that clip requires refereeing the most? Oh, sorry, I'll send the second Menti code. Sorry, guys, I got to send a different one for every question just based on the format of this tool. So there's the Menti link, and if you need the code, if you've got the app on your phone, I know there are some academics on this call that may or may not use this tool. There it is. So which KFA requires refereeing the most in this second scenario? Those of you who don't have it on your screen, I'll show it one more time. Awesome. So 7 out of 11 participants under pressure. So what we mean by under pressure is when there's one team that's clearly under more pressure than the other, we need to go back to our basics of our key focus areas, as we see here. So in our under pressure, what does that mean? High accuracy from the team going backwards effectively. And that could be physical, like in a scrum or a line out, driving line out maul, or it could be metaphorical, after a line break, or with a mismatch in terms of numbers or personnel. But effectively, what we want to be able to do is identify who is the impact player and what they need to be able to do to survive that situation legally or otherwise. So if we go to our second question, we've identified that one team's under pressure. Let me just go back to that Menti screen if I could. How would you describe the infringement? So that this is an easy one. We can tell who needs to be penalized. Clearly, it's the team that conceded the line break. Now, the challenge would be they almost have done enough to have coped legally. So how would you describe the infringement so that everyone would follow it? So you've blown your whistle and you have 3 words or less. And I'm just going to hide this word cloud so not everyone's looking at what other people are writing. And while we reflect on that, I will play it again. Awesome. And if you haven't picked it up, no problem at all. This is why we're here, to be able to refine our process and be able to sharpen that a little bit. So a couple different answers, and in the chat as well, Rupert said tackler not releasing. And again, there's not a lot of this is wrong, but you have that opportunity. You put yourself in a situation where you're mic'd up, you're to the public, or you're the person with their dog on the touchline at the community park can hear you just by virtue of being next to you, or you have that key player, maybe the captain that you penalized, and they're not really debating the fact that they got penalized. They're mainly on about what's this person. They're assessing what you would use as words. So effectively, we've got not released, never onside, attacking, offside, killed opportunity, not a back foot. Obviously, yeah, we're penalizing the white team. I love that. And then not on feet. But if you would like, and Doug saying it didn't go as expected, but this is where I would challenge that. So I've put a slow motion replay, which we rarely get on the field. But if you're half of the way there, if you've identified that white is under pressure, and that's pretty easy. So the next piece is, what is white doing that is an infringement? Because being under pressure is not an infringement, but effectively the person's picked up the ball here. Now, we can debate whether or not this person's offside. So a lot of you said never onside or offside play. I love that. That's technically accurate. But as we watch the tackle happen, what's the no doubter? We can debate offside. I mean, it's pretty clear, but what is the thing that is not debatable? And no one put it into the chat. So if you have an opportunity to look at my screen right now, what is the actual infringement here? If this person's the captain or the best player in the world, the Antoine Dupont or whoever you think the best player in the world is, and they're just looking at you like, if you had 3 words to say, what would you say? And you can fire them in the chat or unmute yourself. Sweet. So tackle height, tackle height's not really an issue there, Sam, because again, we're not in head contact process at the moment. The key is what Shanda and Bruce had said. The player's not on their feet to make the tackle, meaning they have to be on their feet to make a tackle. One thing that players understand deeply, and if you've seen a few games on television, especially with a mic'd up referee, the really good referees will just say tackle from the ground. If you say tackle from the ground, the player will then register, I was on the ground, I made a tackle. The more savvy players in the game will realize, I need to work a little bit harder to get to my feet. We're told that all the time on the feet, less time on the ground as a playing metric. And then you're starting to speak their language as well. So, but the key takeaway is 90% of us hopefully can understand that white is the team that needs to do something special here. The black team have the right to apply pressure, and effectively we have that infringement. So whether it's never onside or whether you use that term tackle from the ground, we need to be able to identify which player we're going to penalize. That's that kind of 7 out of 10. And then the 10 out of 10 moment is, can we communicate concisely what the clear and obvious infringement was? And again, it goes in stages. So again, identify who's under pressure, identify what the thing we're refereeing is. In this case, we're either refereeing a player who's offside, but effectively we're refereeing a player who's under pressure. So whether they're offside or they're off their feet making a tackle, they're the person trying to cope with this wave of pressure coming through. Sweet. We'll move on to clip number 3. So this one a little bit harder. So we will go through it on my screen, and then I will pop up the question in just a second. And I have included a slow-mo replay here, so feel free to navigate back and forth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so our question is on the screen. How would you rank the threats? So if we have a focus of who is the threat to our key focus areas or to positive play, for lack of a better term, how would you rank them from most important or most relevant to least important or least relevant? Sweet. So we've zeroed in on the players in front of ball pretty much as our number one relevant KFA. Then obviously that midfield defender. So looking at the space from the midfield channels, or number 13 as some people use as a cue. Obviously someone under pressure being deliberate. Potentially, especially because we have the attack who's starting to create waves. And then the pillar came in at number 4. So let's go back and look at the clip once again. And hopefully we'll be able to walk away with a snappy little process that will clear up these sometimes difficult decisions to make. So I will stop it quite deliberately right here. And I will ask you another question. So there is contact ahead of the ball carrier. Who is responsible for that contact? So who is liable here? Is it the attacking player, green number 5, in which case we would blow a penalty? Or is it that defender who made a wrong choice? So fire in your answer, either the attacking player or the defender. Again, it doesn't matter which one you pick, really. It's mainly the reason you had for it. That's where we want to get to today. And sometimes there's disagreement, sometimes there's debate, but as long as we have a sound understanding of how we got to that decision, that's where our growth comes from. And I will take it off the screen so that you are not intimidated to answer one way or the other. All right. So, of our now 11 participants, 6-2 split in favor of the defender being responsible for the contact. So what does that look like? We'll go back to our screen. So obviously we have people on the call with different levels of involvement. Some are part-time referees, coaches, players. Others are members of our community pathway, performance pathway, and some who are still in the introductory stages of rugby in general. So let's demystify this, shall we? So if we look at who is responsible for the contact, we need to have the carrying question. So number 6 is carrying the ball, if you're able to see my cursor. And then we have to ask the question, what are we actually refereeing here? So if we are refereeing the in front of the ball scenario, and this is the benefit of video review. So we're basically going into this scenario where we have the ball here and we have contact in front of the ball. So let's back it up a little bit. So this is the origin of the phase. Primary ball carrier catches the ball here, has an option to their right. Don't think of it as a referee. Think of it as either a player or a watcher of rugby. If you look at this particular shape, they have a forward on the edge here. So it's a bit of a 1, 2 forwards here, 2 forwards here, 2 forwards here, 1 forward there. So they're running a bit of a 1, 2, 2, 2, 1 shape. Sometimes teams run a 1-3-3-1. Sometimes teams run a 1-4-2. There's different ways to run shapes, and particularly depending on where the forwards are stacked on the field. So this forward, we clearly know their role, being on the edge, just holding that width and being able to secure a ruck on the outside if that becomes necessary. But effectively, the team gets what they want. They want 2 forwards here with a ball player, otherwise known as a back, out the back, in the boot, or in behind, depending on what language you want to use. So effectively, we go, all right, 6 has the ball, no problem. Is 5 in a position, so the player to his right, is 5 in a position to take a pass legally? And we would have to say yes. Very good. And then we look at other options or other threats. So if we're starting to think about there's going to be some contact between non-ball carriers and the defense, then we have to ask ourselves, all right, who's responsible for this contact? So going back to that question, if someone is in front of the ball, not in a position to take a pass, then we have to really reassess that answer. But here we see that there is no green player, so the contact is going to occur here, as we can see just by the nature of the moving of bodies. Is there anyone in front of the ball right now? And we would say no. Once that pass is thrown, they choose the player wrapping around, so the left option, and then the contact occurs. And then obviously this player runs into a different space. And obviously every time there is a bit of contact ahead of the ball, players will say, ooh, what's that? Or sometimes they won't shout obstruction, but they'll just have a look at the referee like we have in this scenario. So again, right or wrong, or one way or the other doesn't matter. It's what's our process here. So if you're saying that the attack or the attacking 6 was the source of this drama, or the 5 for that matter, we would say that they would have to be in a position to not catch a pass. Here we would say If you think the 5 could have taken a pass here, let's back it up one more frame. So if this player could take a pass here, obviously we have to pass the ball backwards, and the defender makes contact. Well, we'd have to say the defender made a wrong choice, and this is purely just an exercising of a legal option. They went left. This player decided to run around this gap and then give the ball here. So, or if you decide that this contact was completely avoidable, so this number 5 chose to initiate the contact with the defender, then we could have grounds for obstruction. So those are the 2 factors that have to make our decision for in front or obstruction. Is, was the player never in a position to take a pass anyway? So were they in front at the origin of the carry? In which case, it doesn't matter what they're trying to do. They're in front, they're in the way, their problem. Or were they in a position to make a pass, but they deliberately initiated contact with a defender and not the other way around? And that's the cool factor as well, is Shanda and BK agrees, is sometimes we see something and we're not sure and we go, oh man, I might need to blow my whistle and make a decision. The beauty is here, regardless of what, so if we stop it here, does the green team actually gain anything? We can probably say they're now under a bit of pressure, so we can play on anyway. So effectively, as a learning, it's not all about zeroing in on what you need to referee definitively. Oh, I got to blow my whistle here. Sometimes it's about just understanding who's under pressure and does it even have an impact. And if the answer is unclear or no, and the game's moving on, well, so must we. And that's the beauty of it. There's a saying, no one will ever accuse you of under refereeing, especially when something is in doubt and players are playing and everyone is safe. So that hopefully is just a little insight into developing your own process. So given that I try to keep these under 45 minutes, in terms of content, we'll pause there. So you have all those resources as far as key focus areas go. If you are still struggling to keep things 3 words or less when you're trying to define what decision you would make or not make, this resource is here. This resource, apologies, is here for you, effectively to try and use those trigger words. So tackler, not in the way. What does that look like? You know, wrong side, in the way, not in the way, as concise as we can. You know, as far as clean out goes, what does that look like? Were they in a position to move someone? Did they move someone facing their own goal line, or did they not? And again, this goes through space. When we talk about offside play, in the pillar, tight to the ruck in the midfield, wider. When we talk about line speed, how do we referee that? Again, these are all pieces that are defined for us just based on the feedback that we've gotten. And obviously the trends in the modern game outside of our province. And the same can apply to set piece and management. So everything from our head contact process to our kind of big pressure moments and potential unfair play, to the way we move and position ourselves and to the way we communicate. So I have shared with you a bunch of different clips that you can go through. Some of them involve a bit of complex situations where you might need to think about more than one key focus area and then zero in depending on who's under pressure. And then I've got another piece on just head contact process, and regardless of decision making, how did you get there? What path are you following to come to that outcome? So again, those are there for you. And I will, once again, if you don't have access, if you joined a little bit late, no problem. Those clips are here. And once again, that PDF for reference, it is online, but if you want a downloadable version, I'll pop it in here. If you give me one moment. I'll do that for you. Sweet. So all those pieces are there. And as well, I will circulate our session notes this evening, which have a bunch of links. So before we throw it open to the group, just a couple of pieces from me. Our mid-season camp, we've got good registration numbers so far. I think we're in the high 30s. It'd be great to get to 40s or 50s, but that's on arriving for those out of town, hopefully the Friday evening, if not the Saturday morning, so 12th or 13th January, wrapping up on the 14th. Three main themes: contest versus space, so job 1 versus job 2. A bit of a refresher from what we covered in 2019 with some players, which is great. We're going to be working with the UBC men's and women's varsity teams throughout the weekend. We do have Angel Cividanes coming in to actually get us into some uncomfortable positions. We'll be doing some one-on-one scrum shape work, just talking about setup and what dominance looks like from a loose head point of view, from a tight head point of view, on your own ball, on opposition ball, just so we can have a better understanding of, the indicators that go into the scrum picture. And again, we will go through our alignment session will be our head contact process. And again, we'll also have a sneak preview on how does that process look with the upcoming change in the tackle height language. And I say that change in tackle height language as I am on the committee for tackle height review across the country. And it seems as though there might be a change in terms of the line of where, a tackle cannot be above. However, in practice, the way we referee it will not change for the most part. We're still going to use words like, was it avoidable, line of sight, sudden change of direction or dynamic, etc. So hopefully it will be a little bit of a calming session for those who are a little bit worried about what that might look like. As we saw some quite visceral reactions in other parts of the world when they rolled it out last year. Apologies. One more piece logistically I wanted to share. Okay, sorry, Doug, I put you on everyone's screen there. Not intentional, I promise. The Vancouver Sevens Invitational's back. So we've got our tournament happening on Thursday, the 22nd, and Friday, the 23rd. It's going to be a U16, U18, Elite U7s focus. So that is going to be our PRC regions. Plus we have teams from Alberta and Nova Scotia coming in as well. So these are players that are kind of a sevens specific focus group. Those are the age groups that are kind of preparing for things like BC Summer Games, Canada Summer Games, and effectively the Youth Olympic Games. So they are pathway players. They are going to be pretty dialed in, and we do need a good team assembled for that. That's going to be at UBC. And again, our accommodations are provided, as well as travel expenses, etc., as well as a 3-day pass to the Canada Sevens. So the link will be in the notes I send across. If you have not already indicated availability, we do need a good number for that. And we mentioned our mid-season camp. That sign-up link will be included in the notes as well. And again, upcoming ongoing contributions to Coach Logic in terms of our team room discussion are encouraged. If you don't have an account yet, I have a link over here that will be sent to you in a moment's time, where you can jump on using your email, and you're creating your own password. Then you can jump on to our team discussion. It kind of looks like this, where you can talk to specific people. You can ask questions. You can comment on clips other people make, or you can go to the video room and look at footage of pretty much any game that was recorded in British Columbia between now and 2017 when we set up the platform. The mid-season camp apologies link is also there, as well as our VSI ref team sign up and our availability survey. So I have created that for January and February. And again, it just helps our appointments team when that information is shared as early as possible so that the planning can start for the 24 part of the 23-24 season. So that's it for me. I will stay on the call if anyone else has anything that they want to bring up or discuss. But for anything else, thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for those who made the time to join tonight.